The OM5 is the new fancy gimbal from DJI. But how does it compare with the one-year-old battle-tested Pocket 2? Can this one-year-old camera gimbal even compete with the new fancy OM5? You'd be surprised with the results. Let's find out. The OM5 is a vlogger's gimbal. It's totally designed for that particular market. Hell, they even give you a built-in selfie stick. That should give you an indication as to what target audience DJI is aiming this gimbal at. On the other hand, the Pocket 2, it's a workhorse. It will handle vertical as well as the traditional horizontal filming. It's a camera, it's a gimbal, all packed into this tiny little body. Which one is the better option? Which one gives you more functionality and flexibility? The OM5 is what you would call a compact gimbal. It fits in your pocket and you can take it anywhere. But once you add a smartphone and a lens or filter, and then you need to go through the whole balancing process, it takes some time and is anything but compact. The Pocket 2, on the other hand, it's tiny, you're up and running in 2 seconds, literally, and you get the option of staying in the small tiny configuration looking at the small tiny LCD screen, or adding a smartphone so that you actually see on a larger screen what it is that you're doing. So you get that additional flexibility that you don't get with the OM5, where you need to use a smartphone, period. So in that regard, I think the Pocket 2 is much better, gives you a lot more functionality. Plus, if you're the kind of person that wants to go unnoticed, or you might be a little bit self-aware or embarrassed at filming in public places, the Pocket 2 is so small that most people wouldn't even notice that you're filming. With the OM5 and a phone, trust me, people will know that you're filming, no question about that. The OM5 gives you the ability to shoot either on 8-bit or 10-bit HDR+, which I think it's amazing. However, if you shoot at nighttime, for instance, and even though smartphone lenses are getting better and better by the year, if for instance you're on an iPhone, the lenses still have this horrible lens flare, which they still haven't got rid of up until even the iPhone 13. So if you are someone that gets irritated by those lens flares, this is something that you need to be aware of. With the Pocket 2, on the other hand, you can only shoot at 8-bit. You have no HDR. You do have HDR, but it's really badly implemented. I don't recommend anyone using it. So you pretty much have 8-bit on either a normal color space or a sort of flat color space called Disney, which is the one that I recommend everyone doing. And if you expose correctly and use NDs when you're outdoors, the results are incredible. And for nighttime, the Pocket 2 is really, really good, and you don't have to worry about lens flares of any kind. The footage looks amazing, and once you up the contrast a little bit and increase the saturation, it looks phenomenal. The OM5, being a vlogger's gimbal that prioritizes the use of the front-facing selfie lens, has a very limited range of movement. Forget about easily doing shots like going from the ground up. You need to turn the gimbal sideways and then twist your wrist in a really weird and unnatural way. Forget about doing any crazy moves, the gimbal just cannot handle it. The Pocket 2, on the other hand, you have no problem whatsoever. You can go from the ground up, sideways, any type of movement that you can think of, the Pocket 2 can handle it smoothly and without a problem. On top of that, if you want to see better what you're doing, you simply attach your smartphone to the Pocket 2, and that way you get the best of both worlds. A perfectly balanced gimbal that works as a gimbal is supposed to work, and at the same time you get the large real estate screen that you get from a smartphone. Honestly, the Pocket 2, in my opinion, it's the clear winner here. I love the concept of the magnetic clamp that you use to mount the smartphone onto the gimbal itself. I think it's brilliant and it speeds things up. You definitely balance the gimbal a lot quicker than using other gimbals. The problem I find with this mounting clamp is what happens if you lose it or misplace it. Because you only get one clamp with the gimbal and it's so small that you can easily forget it behind, drop it, put it in the wrong bag when you move around, or simply lose it, So in that regard, I like the concept. I still think it's not really well implemented. In terms of the Pocket 2, you don't have to worry about any of this. You're literally up and running in 2 seconds, no need to calibrate, no need to mount anything onto the gimbal. You literally press the button and in 2 seconds you're ready to go. The only thing you need to worry about is whether you have the correct lens or the ND filters. But other than that, it literally is 2 seconds and you're ready to go. You can definitely mount lenses and filters on the smartphone mounted on the gimbal, but the OM5 itself struggles with that additional extra weight, and you actually have to use counterweights to compensate for that additional weight. But to make matters worse, you can actually hear the loud noise of the motors running inside, which I find baffling. Listen to what happens when you turn this gimbal on, okay? Can you hear the background noise? This is the sound of the motors inside, and it's always there. Can you imagine how much worse it would get when you add a filter and a lens on top? Honestly, you tilt, it's there. You pan, it's there. You touch the phone to browse, it's there. You put it on a standby, the sound is there. And that sound, if you record with the smartphone microphones or the built-in mics, it gets recorded. It's just incredible. On the Pocket 2, on the other hand, you can add lenses and filters. You don't have any problems. You can even stack up the filters. The ultra wide is really, really nice. So in that regard, the Pocket 2 again wins over the OM5. The OM5 gives you around 6 to 6.5 hours of battery life. Now, this is less than the OM4, which will give you, I think it was around 14 hours or 15 hours, twice as much. But obviously the OM5 has to accommodate the built-in selfie stick. Still 6.5 hours, in all fairness, is more than enough for a whole day filming. Now, battery life in the Pocket 2 is an area that is nowhere near as good as the OM5. You get about an hour 15, an hour and a half, depending on whether you shoot at normal speed or high speed. And then you need to either use a mount that has a power bank in itself or recharge using a power bank. It's a pain. Honestly, I wish the battery was at least 2.5 or 3 hours. That would really be a great upgrade. But in this case, the OM5 is a clear winner by a long mark. The OM5 takes advantage of the smartphone's computational photography, and that is a clear advance. And whether you use the Mimo app or a third-party app like Filmic Pro, ProTake or whatever other app, you still benefit from the computational photography from the phone itself. The Pocket 2, on the other hand, has no computational photography, so it relies on you exposing correctly the image. And for that, obviously, you need to make sure that you have ND filters or any filter that you need to correctly expose. But forget about computational photography. It's something that, given the new range of smartphones coming through, they're gonna have to implement. But at this moment in time, you have no computational photography. However, if you expose correctly the Pocket 2 and you use a flat color space, the images that you get are really, really nice and just as good. Both the OM5 and the Pocket 2 have similar modes and features. For instance, you get tilt lock, follow and FPV as the gimbal modes. The only thing is that with the OM5, because of the limited range of movement, tilt lock and follow, they're not really modes that you can use. They're not really what they're supposed to be, because you need to angle the gimbal in really weird ways to take advantage of that. With the Pocket 2, you don't have to worry about those. The tilt lock works as a tilt lock, and the follow mode works as a true follow mode. The OM5 gives you an additional mode, which is called the spin mode or the inception mode. And this is something that the Pocket 2 does not offer. However, it's very simple. You just turn the Pocket 2 around with your hands on FPV mode, and that way you get your inception mode. Now, this is something that you need to really think about what it is that you plan to do and how. In my opinion, I reckon the Pocket 2 wins here, because even though you don't have the spin mode, you get a lot more flexibility, functionality. The gimbal modes work as they're supposed to. And inception mode, really, when was the last time you ever saw a shot done with this mode? The tracking feature on the OM5 is a massive improvement from the OM4. The Pocket 2 tracking feature, honestly, is a piece of shit. The Pocket 2, on the other hand, is a completely different story. It's absolute garbage. The problem I have with all these tracking features is that they always keep the subject that you try to track in the middle of the frame. So if you're tracking someone's face, there's always this huge headroom left above someone's head, and that makes the shot look really unnatural. So yes, the OM5 is superior to the Pocket 2 in this regard, but I personally never use the tracking feature. I don't recommend anyone using it. So entirely up to you. For me, it's not a feature that I use, but the OM5 is definitely better than the Pocket 2. The unique new selling point of the OM5 is this built-in selfie stick that it comes with that allows you to have a wider field of view when you use the selfie lens at the front of the phone. Now obviously the front-facing lens is nowhere near as good in quality as the rear lenses on the phone, but there is no way to turn around the gimbal and use the selfie stick with the rear lenses. If you want to do that, you need to mount the phone facing away with the rear lenses facing you, and obviously you don't get to see what it is that you're doing. You don't have any way of monitoring whether your framing is right or whether the camera is pointing in the right direction. You have to sort of guess it. With the Pocket 2, you don't have to worry about any of this. The single lens works either way, whether it's front facing or facing away, and the quality is really, really good. And if you want to have a wider field of view and you don't want to use a wide angle lens, you just simply use a handheld tripod or a Gorilla Pod or something like that, and done deal. Honestly, it's just, I don't really think this built-in selfie stick is such a big thing, useful as some people might think. Honestly, I think it's a bit of a gimmick, but if that kind of floats your boat, go for it. Personally, I think the Pocket 2 is so much more functional, and that single lens, it's a really good lens. The Pocket 2 destroys the OM5 in every possible aspect. This is just the gimbal and you get absolutely nothing in terms of sound. If you want to have the same functionality with the OM5 that you get with the Pocket 2, you need to get yourself a wireless radio mic, and that means mounting a wireless receiver onto the phone or clamp it onto the gimbal, and things start to look a little bit weird and complicated. With the Pocket 2, if you get the Creators Combo, you're not only getting a really good wireless microphone, but the do-it-all handle, which is an incredible and very useful piece of equipment because it acts as both a wireless receiver for sound and a video wireless receiver and sender. And the quality of the sound is really good. Honestly, you get so much more functionality and flexibility with the Pocket 2 than with the OM5 that almost comparing one with each other is kind of pointless. If you're into vlogging, the OM5 with the smartphone on is anything but compact. And if you use the selfie stick on top of that, well, it's even worse. You're guaranteed to be drawing eyeballs on you for the simple fact that you're gonna look kind of odd. With the Pocket 2, on the other hand, you can go really unnoticed. Most people wouldn't even realize that you're filming. And if you want to see more than the little 1.5 inch or 2 inch screen that you get on the Pocket 2 itself, you can attach a phone and get a much better view on what it is that you're doing. If you want to replicate the selfie stick, you just add a handheld tripod and you're done with it. Honestly, the Pocket 2 gives you so much more flexibility because you can be as discreet as you want to be, which is something that with the OM5 you simply can't. It is what it is and there is no way around it. So in that regard, I still think the Pocket 2 is a better option than the OM5. This is an area where the OM5 wins against the Pocket 2, hands down, no questions about it. Especially if you use an iPhone and you are in the Apple ecosystem, because you can then view and download files really easy, whether it's through a cable directly from the phone to the laptop or the computer or via AirDrop, which is very well implemented. The Pocket 2 on the other hand is an absolute pain. There is no way to wirelessly connect it to a laptop or a computer. To make matters worse, the slot for the memory card in the Pocket 2 is so badly implemented because getting the card back in there, it's really difficult, and unless you have long nails, it's a real mission. So please, DJI, when you release your Pocket 3, whenever that is, look into this because it's an absolute nightmare. You might think watching this comparison that I have something against the DJI OM5, and it's far from it. I just like to call things for what they are, and I don't think this is a good gimbal. I don't think you should buy this gimbal unless what you do is vertical filming using the selfie lens. If that is the case, then this is a good gimbal for you. But if you're in traditional filming, horizontal filming, this is not a good gimbal. You get a lot more functionality and flexibility with the Pocket 2. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but gives you so much more. Now, if you want to find out more about what you can do with the Pocket 2, I've got a video appearing just about here, in which I go through 10 cool shots with the Pocket 2. Honestly, it's a really good video to watch. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.